But all right, we're going to get started. Happy 420, everyone, first and foremost, and welcome to Numbers Therapy, episode 43. Today's episode titled Goblins, Protocols, and Operational Creativity. I want to call out, last week we talked about shitcoins on the show. We know where we're at right now with a couple shitcoins floating out there. I'm not going to say it was intentional and not intentional. We'll see where we get to today and how today's episode goes. The purpose of Numbers Therapy, as we know, is to talk through the macro, operational, financial, technical, trading-based, other dimensions of Web3, putting the pieces together to help everyone understand the latest picture and continue to elevate, hearing some incredible backstories and having some good laughs along the way. For everyone listening live, we have the guest questions channel. Please feel free to drop questions in there along the way. If they're more newbie questions, totally okay. Definitions, you don't understand an acronym, please drop it in there. There are probably other people who are thinking the same thing. If they're more intermediate or advanced questions, also please drop them in there. I'll make sure they get woven in along the way. Lastly, Numbers Therapy is rated NFA, as we know, as in none of what you hear in here is financial advice. So, without further ado, and on to today's guest and episode. We've had some really phenomenal guests on Numbers Therapy that meld really nicely with our incredible community. Today's, I think, will bring a very unusual viewpoint. Equal parts creative, fun, and executionally sound. Today's guest brings with him a slew of projects that may look tremendously varied when it meets the eye. On one hand, and on the one end, today's guest has a deep crypto history and has spent a lot of time and energy on the protocol side of Web3, thinking through what foundational architecture and tools are needed to bolster the ecosystem. The other end, we have Truth, including Secret Society and the Goblins, which may seem like a series of memes, and you wouldn't be wrong. Far, far more than that. An investor or a trader, but equally as a builder or aspiring builder, I think we're in for a real treat today with an incredible path to dissecting creativity, risk, execution, and beyond. Very happy to have this guy as a recent friend and a colleague. Everyone welcome AJT to the stage, everyone. AJT, how are you doing today?
What's going on? How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Yeah. What is going on? Well, it's 420 today, so you get a special episode on your behalf, and hopefully everyone's enjoying the fruits of that as we're listening. So let's start at the top. A pretty long history in the crypto world. Take us back before NFTs and Web3 became NFTs and Web3. You get into crypto, and where was your attention to start?
Yeah, I think I got into crypto like 11 years ago, around in April. So yeah, about exactly 11 years ago. I joined right out of school. I worked at this company called Aviary. It's a photo editing company based in New York, and a company ended up selling to Adobe. But I was doing sort of like business development and platform stuff, specifically people that wanted to integrate like photo editing into their applications. So like it powered like editing on Twitter and Flickr and PhotoBucket and all those places, for those that remember those places. And there was a new startup that just raised their Series A from Union Square Ventures in the New York fund, Union Square Ventures. And I happened to be friends with some of the people there. And they're like, we just backed this company based in Iowa. And they're trying to build a new, like, like financial platform. And there's this crazy thing on it that like people are doing is they're buying, these like tokens. And so I ended up joining Dwala, a company based in Iowa. I ended up opening up the New York office and running their API platform on the business side. And when I joined, Bitcoin was, I think, $4 or maybe $5. And I did not buy enough to not have to be here right now, or I didn't hold enough to not have to be here right now. No, I'm joking. But no, so I had like a front row seat into many ups and many downs, and I've been through all the cycles. But so I had a front row seat on a like a platform to go and it was basically Coinbase before Coinbase existed. You'd move money to Dwala, right? And then you move the money from Dwala to something like Mt. Gox or BitInstant or Bitstamp. We were like sort of the gateway into the crypto land. So I just had a front row seat in that stuff. It was super fun. And even though I left in 2014, I was there from 2012 to 2014, and started a company that had nothing to do with crypto. We were still, my co-founder and I, we were still like, because he ran the tech side of the API platform and I ran the business side. We were still like very much in the game. We had like an Ethereum rig in the office, and we did the ICO stuff, which seems to be coming back right now with shitcoins. But we did the ICO stuff, and then we did the DeFi stuff, and then so we were always like in the game. But then eventually came back into the Web3 world more officially.
I mean, so what that kind of suggests, right? I mean, this is like you said, 2012, right? So
yeah.
I mean, you don't just join a company because it's just a job, right? That's not why one joins a company. You also have to like buy into the premise, at least to some extent. So it must have meant that when you heard about this and you'd heard it, about crypto and digital currency at that point, you at least like probably partly had your head around it and were comfortable with the concept, or even bought into the concept. Is that fair?
Oh yeah, no, I mean it was super interesting, and the Ben, who's the founder of Dwala, just had a really interesting pitch around just building a new set of rails for the financial institutions, and how you can go about it in a bunch of different ways. And you take something like PayPal, once you start building on top of MasterCard, Visa, Amex, etc., like you just can't get off it, no matter how you try. So you have to just start before you have to like just not allow that in your ecosystem. It's the only way that you could potentially build a new rail. And listen, Dwala has had their ups and downs. I think there's still like 100 employees there. I still own my stock, so maybe it's worth something one day. But they're more like an ACH API now. So if you want to like move money, like interbank money, that's what you do.
That's fascinating. So they have no connection to crypto anymore, is what you're suggesting. They're more in like traditional.
No, well, so they got into a lot of hot shit. A lot of curse here.
You can curse. You can. It's your show, man.
No, it's your show. No, they got into a lot of hot water with Mount Gox implosion. We were like the main way to get money in and out. So like, it was just like it was like the Silk Road Mount Gox stuff. Really, like Dwala was like named in all the stuff, like in the court stuff. So we just got out of that business. Like they just like cut it off. And that was like most of the usage. So we just like pivoted into like, interbank stuff. But yeah, that was a fun time.
That's so fascinating too, right? Like so on point with what like the thought process was, right? And yet, the regulation came in, it was ambiguous, and then you were there, and then as a result, the business had to pivot, right? Just like very fascinating how you could be so on point and then land in a place which was kind of the antithesis of like what the original idea was, right? Which is to stay away from the traditional rails.
No, it's crazy how that happens. But I mean, this was like, the legal aspects around this was just too much. I mean, I wasn't management. I was a, young whippersnapper at the time. But I was just like running business development, so I didn't have any say in like the decisions really.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So okay, so that was 2012 to 2014. It's pretty relevant to right now, where we find ourselves on 420 of this year. How many shitcoin cycles have you been through at this point that you've seen ups and downs of? I'm curious to hear anecdotally how you perceive that.
I mean, I think I've been through them all, right? I mean, like, Bitcoin didn't do shitcoin. I remember when we were at Dwala that the team at Ripple came into the office and they're like, "Hey, you want like 100,000 Ripple?" Like, and it was like $10, $5, whatever. And then I lost it. I had no idea where it was. And I asked my co-founder, I told my co-founder I'd give him 10% if he found it. And he did. He found it and I sold it. I don't know what it's worth now, but I sold it a while back. But yeah, no, I've been through them all. Cause I mean, we had an Ethereum, I'm now based in Miami, but we were in New York. And we worked at a co-working space. Basically worked at all of them at one point. But we worked at a place called Alley NYC, up in 25th Street, 24th Street, it was around there, right on the like 7th Avenue area, between 6th and 7th Avenue. And we'd have to pay electricity. So we set up an Ethereum rig in the office and we were just like mining Ethereum. So yeah, I think I saw all of them because Ethereum was when the shitcoin started. No one was really doing shitcoins before that.
That's totally amazing. That's like the early day, by the way, the predecessor of the guy who was in Starbucks, right? Who linked up his mining operation in Starbucks because zero electricity. But that's pretty incredible. I have a curiosity question too, because you were at that point and you were quite early. I feel like there's a handful of folks who are listening live and otherwise who, of course, came across crypto at the time, and yet almost everybody, right, didn't buy enough or just didn't listen or didn't buy it. What do you think the reason is for that? Was it that you think people didn't viscerally buy into the premise? There wasn't enough critical mass. The user experience and the on ramp was too difficult and too mind numbing to some extent. Of, I set up a mining operation. Where do I buy it from? What about this crazy wallet? Like, what did you see?
Yeah, it's all of that. But here's the truth. The truth of the matter is, if you are a sane mind, right, and you knew where your coins were, you sold them at some point, like on the way up, right?
Yeah.
You either lost them and refound them, or you are absolutely insane, right? Like, there's no in between. You can't have like just held on. I mean, maybe or like it's just a small group of people. Actually, there used to be a joke because we were like literally like at the front center of like Silk Road stuff, and we used to joke that like because like the stuff on Silk Road was like drugs and hitmen and all that stuff. But the joke was, especially when I think it's like maybe at the time Bitcoin was like $100. We used to joke, it's like, and this was at $100. We thought this was the case. Now imagine it like where it is now. But we thought like, oh man, like all the worst people in the world are getting rich off Bitcoin, and like what is that going to do like 10 years from now if all these people that had thousands of Bitcoin and each one's worth $100, like what are these people going to do with the money if they're like quote unquote bad people? They're not actually bad people, but it was like that was like part of the joke. Yeah, no, I mean, I forgot what the question was.
No. I think you answered it, which is like why there were the obstacles as to why people didn't hang on or purchase, right? Which is more, your thesis was more that like people did purchase it, or the percentage of people that did purchase it, just you wouldn't have even hung on anyway.
If you had like really, really strong conviction and you really believed in this stuff and everything, like, yeah, maybe you would have held on to it. But like, I find that most people that held on to the really valuable stuff is the ones who lost it and then refound it. And great for them, losing it and then refinding it. But I think that's that's few and far between.
And that also implies that you didn't have what you thought was a better use for the money as well, right? Not just that you thought $100 was a lot, but also I put it into this other investment or something else, right? And I feel like there's maybe a parallel to draw from here too, which is as long as you take like the scope wide enough on what long-term holding is, like we've already seen with like old sports cards that like they of course become worth something over time if you could just simply hold on to it and keep it in good condition, right? And certain crypto in this case, like there are like there's very wide parallels, but the question is like how much shit do you want to hoard and keep track of and not watch along the way?
Well, this is like digital shit, so it's like a little easier. But like, I also like spent a lot of Bitcoin. Like I bought Nick tickets with Bitcoin in like 2013. It's a terrible game, and I'm a Knicks fan from New York. Hopefully we could turn it around next game. But I went to it's funny. I went to Knicks OKC I think Harden was already gone, but it was a Christmas or New Year's Day game. I went with my wife, and I spent like, I think Bitcoin was like it was up a little bit more, but I still spent like 0.7, 0.8 of a coin for 2 tickets. And I was like, that when I went to 60, I was like, this is probably getting close to like the most expensive regular season game in existence.
Yeah. I mean, Knicks tickets currently are barely worth that for season tickets, let alone for one ticket at the time, to be honest.
Yeah.
That totally makes sense. So now you kind of find yourself and, you carried forward beyond just crypto, right? And you started to land to a bunch of different projects. Can you maybe talk everyone through like the mix of projects that you're attached to currently and maybe a little bit of, how you got there?
Yeah, the quick like right after Dwala, I started a company called Social Rank with my co-founder Michael. It was like a social media analytics company. We ended up selling it a few years later after like Cambridge Analytica and all that stuff came out because they started just shutting down APIs from like the Facebook and Twitter and Instagram style side of things. Um, but we built it to like 100K in MRR. We had customers like the NBA, the NFL, Netflix, Samsung, L'Oreal, The Rock, the Kardashians. We basically built like a really great audience segmentation tool for Twitter and Instagram called Social Rank. So that was from like 2014 to 2019. We raised a little bit of venture money for that. And then so I do two things right now. It feels like I do a lot, but I really do two things. I started a company called Upstream with my co-founder Michael, and Upstream has had a few different lives, but what it has become is very simply we're trying to build the best way to start and run a DAO. You know, building DAO infrastructure. When we want to be the best place to start and run a DAO, and we still think that the DAO space is super, still super new, and there's so much opportunity there. But we basically, it is like the evolution of how we got there makes sense, and I'll get into maybe later if you want to know. But that's one side. So we've raised about $20 million from venture capitalists, ranging from Tiger Global to funds that people here. I don't know if anyone here is in like the startup venture space, but a bunch of different funds. Vitalik's fund actually invested a fund called Finbushi. A bunch of like angels and stuff like the Gary V's of the world. And so that's DAO infrastructure. So that's one side. We've raised like $20 million. There's like 12, 13, 14, 15 of us there. And then on the other side, I started Truth Labs with two people, someone named Caesar Kuriyama. Caesar's been a friend of mine for over a decade. He's the founder of a company called 1 Second Every Day. It is basically a diary of like 1 second every day. If anyone here has seen the movie Chef with Jon Favreau, at the end of the movie, it's a pretty big piece of the movie. And he has one of the most popular TED Talks. I don't know if ever, but it's definitely one of the most popular. And him and I were just degenning and stuff together. And then his good friend is the artist Process Gray, who is just a phenomenal artist. And they went to school together, and we started something called Truth Labs. And the idea was we had a project called Illuminati NFT. And the idea was sort of like a celebration of all the collections. And the joke was, if the Illuminati really existed, then in the Web3 space, or if Illuminati existed, it would be a DAO. That was the joke. So we're like, all right, what if we put together a collection where 50% of the mint goes to a DAO, right? And that like basically goes back to the community for them to do whatever they want with, and then the other 50% goes to the team, Truth Labs, to basically build out a universe and a collection, etc. So we launched Illuminati NFT. I think we announced it in like December of 2021, and then we launched it January 3rd, 2022. And pretty instantly, we have a really cool like rollout plan for it. And then we basically sold out within like a minute or two after it came out. This was during those days where after a minute or two, it usually was gone. And yeah, part of the whole thing was like, we're going to build this like we're big fans of like Mischief, the company in Brooklyn, in New York. And we always just like all the stuff they do is just super funny. Like, for those that don't know Mischief, they just create mischief. So like they did the Mr. Beast, like everyone gets a Lambo, and it's either you got like a Lambo car, or like a Lambo, like, toy car. Or you get, like, there's like different, like everyone pays $50 and somebody gets a Lambo. And he's done it. He did like the Satan shoes with Lil Nas X and a bunch of other crazy stuff. So we're like, mischief stuff is fun. We like that. And like, could we be like a Web3 mischief? And so I'll stop there. But obviously, Truth now is a bit of more of we launched obviously Goblintown, and I can get into that and how we sort of came to do it, and how it sort of took off and everything. But the idea is we're building this universe. there's three main collections in truth. There's Illuminati, there's Goblintown, and there's something called the 187. So if people go to the 187.xyz, it shows there's the origin of it is when we launched Illuminati, we had a fatal flaw in the contract. Basically, every time someone minted, the gas would go up. So by the time 100-ish people minted, and this was like a pre-sale, but by the time we got to like 100, gas was like $300. And we're like, we can't sell. The collection was 8,128. We can't sell 8,128. So we killed it. And we airdropped all the people who had bought already the new collection. We fixed it. And then we basically, it ended up stopping at 187. So we basically turned all of those gold. And initially we had no plans with it. But they, in the community, in Discord, they started calling themselves the 187. They made their own channel. And we had this idea of building this universe. Gray, the artist, this guy Bruce on the team, they had been building this like universe of characters for quite some time, like just as a passion project. And we realized, we could basically have 187 main characters in our universe, and those could be like these one of ones. So if people just go to the 187, you could see we just built. So they're not all live yet. There's only like 30 out of the 187 that are actually live. Wow. And if people go to, this is the link, they're pretty crazy. And one of them is obviously a goblin, because when we revealed that we were Goblintown, we released one. But if you go, they're pretty insane. We literally just revealed this little dragon today called Tufu. And what we do is we actually roll on Discord, and we like roll like a randomized number between 1 and 187, and then we reveal one. So we rolled it yesterday, and we revealed number 182, and the community gets all excited. We do like a little preview of it. But anyway, so that's I'll stop there. Sorry, I've been rambling for a while.
Is that 1 week that you reveal? What's the frequency?
So it's a great question. We revealed like 18, and then we took a little bit of a break to set up like what was to come, and we started revealing them again. As of, I want to say, who's up now? We had just Tufu. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've been basically doing one a week for the last 2 months. And that's the cadence we're going to probably do until they're all done. But we might start doing more of them. I mean, it'll take a long time. It's only been, I want to say, 25 revealed so far, maybe 30 out of the 187. And listen, these are like diamond hand people, because they have from the mint out because we in January until the first 187 revealed was the first week of June, so 6 months. So it was like a little nutty. Like anyone who's held on to them are like they're a little crazy, but they're awesome. Also, they're
your perfect demo overlap with your BTC holders, like you were talking about before, who have to be a little bit crazy. So similar holders.
Yeah, and actually, what's cool is that we're doing something we announced it a while ago, but we're going to finally release the first two. Is we have something called the 187 collaborative license agreement. So because there's 187 of them, we can do some interesting stuff that you can't do with like a 10,000 collection. So far, there's only been one collection from the 187, which is Goblintown. But that won't always be the case. And we announced a collaborative agreement where if you hold the token of something that we do, something, whether we make money or this or that, we will put together an agreement and revenue share. Wow. So we have two agreements. One of them is the holder of the Goblintown one, and the other is one that we're going to do some interesting merch thing for. But we can literally revenue share with the holder without it being a security, because it is a literal custom agreement with that person, as opposed to a generic agreement that everyone signs. Yeah. That would be like an unregistered security. So and it's super cool. Like the person who's holding like the Goblin one's going to get like a cut of Goblin sales. So like they're going to get a check for probably north of 40 ETH.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. I am very confident we'll see people We'll see transactions kicking up on OpenSea or Blur right now.
I think there's only like one or two even for sale. Like the people who hold it just don't even list it really.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. It's a really, really cool idea. So what I was hearing from you also is for Upstream versus Truth Labs, different teams, right? Is there overlap sometimes you have where you have like your core resources and you come across several of your projects? Is that how you think about it?
No, it's funny that you asked that because there is a little overlap right now for something that I'm working on, but normally there's not. I mean, Upstream is venture backed. We've got millions of bucks in the bank, and we're like trying to become the best way to start and run your DAO. Truth Labs has not raised any venture money, but we've also done very well. We're the maybe one project to beat the bear to some degree. When Goblintown came out, so we haven't raised money. We've been offered to raise money, but we just haven't needed it. And we like the core team we have. There's like 10 of us that we just like we work really well together. Once you raise money, it's just like a little bit of a different ballgame. But we're not against it. We just would need to make sense. It would need to be like because we want to expand and we have something that we could like pour, gasoline on the fire. But in terms of overlap, it's funny because Gray, the artist, just drew something for something we have coming out at Upstream. But normally there is an overlap. It's separate teams. I'm the only overlap.
Got it. And one of the interesting things that I find about you too is that usually, in my experience, it winds up being somebody's either very, very creative, but not always like operationally sound of like executing, right? Just really, really wildly creative, but goes wide. Or it tends to be, on the other end of the spectrum, like very, very operationally sound, and but maybe limited in creativity sometimes. But in your case, you have really, really good creativity, and yet you're also obviously operationally really, really sound as well, right? You're doing both of them while you're juggling things. How do you manage that?
I wouldn't agree with that assessment.
Oh, okay.
It's funny. Yeah. I'm not allowed into the creative chat at Truth. So it's funny. I came up with the idea for Goblintown. And then I pitched it to Gray and Caesar, and then we sort of ran with it. But it's funny, I'm actually not invited to the creative chats, and I would say my skills are actually more on the. I have an infinite amount of energy. That's one of my skills. Infinite amount of energy, and then I also just I'm a really good problem solver. I would say that operationally sound, like I'm a decent pitch person, so like I could raise money from investors. But like we have a COO at Upstream that like runs the show on that. Like, her name's Sarah. She's awesome. She was like the chief of staff for this woman named Stephanie Goldschmidt, who is probably going to eventually be the CEO of Goldman. And she's like operational. Like I'm not the best operationally like good person. But and I have like flashes of creativity, but like I'm not really. I bring an idea to the creative team and then they run with it. So so that assessment isn't accurate. May look like that from the outside, but it's I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses. Like and they're just not. Those wouldn't be the things I jump to.
That's super interesting to hear that. I mean, I guess where I was going with that, and I get what you're saying in terms of like functional and kind of how process runs out. But the other thing here is that you do have a couple separate businesses that you're running here. I'm sure you have ideas for other things, and there's some balance between finding the idea that you think is something that you believe in, and then actually pushing forward to execute on it, whether it's you doing it or you have an operational person or otherwise, and also maintaining flexibility to have sub projects, right, as part of Truth Labs. So not going too wide, because even with your energy, there's probably only so many things you could take on, right? I mean, I guess my question is, do you put limits on the number of projects or number of things you work on at a certain time, or do you let natural course determine if you have more bandwidth? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I stopped taking on more things because there's only so much you can do really well. So it's really those two. It's those two things in my family. That's it.
Yeah.
I have two young girls, and I just if someone has a good idea and they need help, I'm always happy to like help and like make an intro or look at something and give feedback. But it gets to a point where you're spreading yourself too thin. So I can't. I like wouldn't be able to function.
That makes sense. Let's talk about upstream a little bit because I am very curious about this. You said upstream pivoted a couple times, if I'm not mistaken, right? So maybe if you can just give like a minute or two on
evolved. I would call it evolved, but yeah,
okay,
you can call it a pivot. Yeah. So the vision has always been the same, which is what is the future of community, right? So community like 1.0, right, is like local and geo based and local. So like I grew up in New York, so I'm a Knicks fan, I'm a Yankees fan, I'm a Rangers fan, I'm a Giants fan. I'm Jewish, so I go to a local synagogue. I go to a specific college, and that's where I am. So like that's a very like community 1.0 is like very like geo and location based and I guess I'm saying the same thing, geo and location. Community 2.0 is like interest based, right? So like, and that's Facebook groups, that's Discord, that's Twitter groups, that's any community that you're in online interest based, and basically like any interest anyone here has, like there is someone else in the underbelly of the web that has that same interest. Like I've never met someone with a singular interest that nobody else has. So you will find your people online. The idea of community 3.0 is it's not that it's just IRL or geo based or interest based. It's that it's both. It's online, it's local, but the difference is it's ownership, right? So it's like it's a DAO. It's essentially like instead of funding an admin of a community, I'm funding the community itself, and I am getting a token. I'm getting ownership of that thing. So the way we sort of saw it was like we started off like wanting to find a better way to like, or what does the future of community look like? Well, when we started in end of 2019, beginning of 2020, virtual connecting got really hot really quick because of COVID. And so we built a really great way to like start a virtual community and run virtual events. And it just, we raised a small seed round, like $2.5 million, and we just like ran with it. And we just got a lot of usage during COVID because of that. Now it evolved because we saw the writing on the wall, which was like, these communities are great, but it's like I'm still beholden to some sort of admin. I'm still beholden to some person who's in charge of it, as opposed to it being owned by whether you contribute, an amount of money or whether that you get a certain amount of tokens or whatever it is. So it's always like, so while it was a pivot to be like, all right, we're going all in on like starting and running DAOs, I think, the word DAO is a word that like you can use for like an online entity. You can use it for an online community. There's a bunch of ways you can sort of slice it. And the way I think about it is like the future of communities are DAOs. The more time you spend online, the more time you need to organize online. And
that makes sense.
So that's how I sort of see it.
And so for upstream, who is your target demo? Is it someone who's trying to build a community that may or may not be Web3 centric and just has an idea in their mind? Is it communities that are already formed but aren't organizing and voting and there's not appropriate governance? Is it both? Like, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. The ideal situation, there's a few different use cases, right? Investment club is one of them. I want to pull money together with some friends and buy some JPEGs, right? That's easy. But I think like where we're going with it is more, we either want to buy something together or we want to learn something. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to approach running a community, running a DAO. Right now we're focused more on Web3 type of people. There's a bunch of things where we have like a big launch in the beginning of May. That is like setting us in a specific direction to the company. And it's a lot of the things that we need in place that like I would call like table stakes to like start and run a DAO are being built right now. That should be live in the next 2 weeks before we like start to roll out the direction we're taking things. I know that's a little vague, but like we're like close to announcing it, so I just don't want to.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious, have you spent any time speaking with Web2 brands on something like this? Because, when I think about the spectrum that exists, right? Like there's like the Web3 people, all of whom are here and around us, right? Then there's maybe like consumers that can maybe kind of get their heads around things. And then at like the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, you have Web2 companies who are maybe certain of them are more traditional in nature. And oh yeah, by the way, they're public companies. So you'd have to somehow convince them, not just them, that modern future, 3.0 governance makes sense, but also, their board conceivably would have to buy into the concept of DAOs and why shared governance makes sense and everything. Have you had some of those conversations? Like, what have they been like?
Oh, for sure. I mean, listen, my time at Social Rank, I know every single brand, right? We worked with everyone. We were like the most popular Instagram like audience tool for a few years. So like all the brands I know, all the Web3 leaders at all the big companies I know. And some of them are embracing this stuff and some of them are like, we can't get it past legal, right? So it's there's a handful of big brands that have like wanted to start DAOs that they're still like, we're a big apparel company, we're a big beauty makeup company, we're a big CPG company. Like, how can we use this stuff? And it's tricky. It's like it's gonna take a while. Even some of the ones that really wanted to try stuff, I mean, the last 6 months of shit that's happened has really turned a lot of people off, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think it probably starts with the FTX stuff. Is that, and like some of them don't even know what they don't know. You know what I mean? Like there was a big brand we were talking to, and they were wanting to do something with them. Whatever, it's unrelated to actually Upstream was more on the truth side. And like their legal was afraid of Web3 because of Silicon Valley Bank. And I was like, Silicon Valley Bank has nothing to do with Web3. They actually didn't even really let most Web3 companies even bank there. Like Circle got to bank there, but that's because they had billions of dollars there. You know what I mean? It's like, it was just like, I don't know. It's just going to take a while. These people.
Have you ever tested pitches, by the way, as you're speaking to some of these brands, pitches where you like really, really, really intentionally avoid having the word Web3 in there or anything blockchain, Web3, any of those kind of,
Oh yeah. No, you can't. I mean, they don't understand that, so you have to. Like that is like it's like digital collectibles, like, or digital assets. You can't talk about blockchain, NFT, crypto. Those are like red flags.
Yeah. Okay. So
unfortunately,
it gets past that first hurdle then, right? Where they're like conceptually bought into what you're saying in some variety for some variety of reasons. Like, we love our community to be able to vote on X or whatever else it is, with probably some limitations, until you get to the point that the mechanism to be able to do it is blockchain and DAOs, and then I guess it falls off at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, you have to like make a good argument to them, and I think like the argument is pretty sound, and the argument is essentially like, the more time you spend online, the more things you're going to do online, and the more native things you need to be like natively making online communities, right? Natively having an online currency. Those are things that just makes a lot of sense, and it's just conceptually, I think they comprehend that, but it's just like the buzzwords that sound scary to them.
Yeah, that totally makes it. What's interesting about what you're saying, right, is that obviously your focus is on communities and DAOs, but like you're suggesting, right, this isn't limited to DAOs, right? It's like any of these buzzwords are going to be a problem that people are running into from all different vantage points in businesses within Web3, right, and projects within Web3. Same problem, different flavor.
Yeah, there was an interesting one recently, really big company, everyone here has heard of them, that want to maybe make a DAO as like an alumni community, as like a token, like a soul-bound token to alumni, right? That you get access to this DAO, and there could be programming and this and that. And it's sort of run by the people, and they could schedule events and do whatever they want, yada yada. They're like, 70% of our people don't have wallets. Like, how would they interact? And there's ways around that. I don't think it's impossible, but it's just like, these are like 10,000 business professionals that'd be like alumni for this thing. And, it's still a little early. I know we thought we were early like a year ago or 2 years ago. Unfortunately, we're now early again.
Yeah, it makes sense. No confidence lost for whatever it's worth, but yeah, it totally makes sense.
At least this is the first time people don't think it's like it's over. It's just like, yeah, it sort of sucks. Like it's in like a holding pattern, but I don't see the crypto's over. Like that's not a conversation I'm hearing anymore, which is an improvement, I think, from the last 10 years.
It is an improvement. It definitely is an improvement. This kind of links to another question I have on my mind too, which is, so going back to when you're starting, any of these businesses that you have, right? Be it more on the protocol side of things, be it more with Truth Labs, right? A concern that always exists, of course, in this space is regulation, right? We heard it originally. We were talking about, Dwala, right, is the background. Continue to hear it now. We know that it's still ambiguous. Regulation has not been decided in many cases. I feel like for a lot of people who are creating projects or want to create projects, sometimes that can be really paralyzing, right? Because, there's just kind of like this perceived risk of the unknown. So you might be like totally bought into Web3, like many of the people are here, and wanting to create something, but also simultaneously nervous that if I create this thing, like, is it on the right side of the line? Like, what happens if this entity that I have no control over decides that I'm not on the right side of the line? Like, how do you approach that? How do you think that and like the right steps, control what you can control, figure out what you think is or isn't reasonable, but make decisions and just execute at that point?
Yeah. I mean, there's some obvious stuff that just like doesn't make sense, right? Like in terms of like you see all the stuff with like Gary Gensler and all that stuff that like is insane. But like, I mean, I'm on the NFT side, we're basically fine as long as you're not promising profits, as long as you're not doing super obvious things that would be a security, right, or unregistered security, you're probably fine. I mean, listen, art is art, right? Unless a Warhol painting is going to turn into a security somehow, you're good on the art. It's the second you're saying, like I remember back in the day during the bull, like OpenSea was like pulling off some projects that were like on OpenSea, and it would be like, why are they pulling off? It's like those guys were promising like a 10% APY to their NFT. It's like you can't do that. You can't promise those type of things. So that's like the obvious stuff. In terms of DAOs, like DAOs are not legally anything, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're not a legal recognized entity. So because of that, like you need a DAO to live within whatever is that exists that does make sense. So for example, like for Illuminati, we have a DAO that has, I want to say like 800 plus ETH in it. And that DAO is a nonprofit, specifically a foundation. Well, it's a UNA. It's an unregistered nonprofit association that is seeking foundation status. So it's becoming a foundation, and the idea is that it's sort of this like there's a wrapper for it. So you have to like work within the legal confines. Now, that being said, like if you're buying a Bored Ape with like 5 friends and you want to start a DAO and pool money together, right? You either can make an LLC, right? And then you can just basically like, do a pass through and that's it. Or you can opt to not do anything and then it'll just be looked at as a general partnership. So like the only time this becomes really an issue, right, is it's like if they're, and that's obviously like under 100 people investment club, but like the only time it really becomes an issue is if like there's conflict, right? So if like one guy's like, hey, we bought this Bored Ape at 100, we bought the top of Bored Apes, we bought 150 ape, and now it's worth less than 50, and I voted no to buy it, but the 4 other people in DAO voted yes, and I want to sue you. Unless you're an entity, the guy can sue you like personally, right? General partnerships, there's no liability protection. So you just have to know what you're sort of getting into some of this stuff. I think the big questions we'll solve in the next year or two is specifically around these bigger entities like a Constitution DAO. level like size. And it's like, how can you do that? Or like, are those nonprofits, or can
Yeah.
you have a token? And like, I made $200 into Constitution DAO. I made $2,000, right? Like, they're a quote unquote nonprofit. Is that okay? It hasn't been tested because everyone mostly made money on that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? There's no like lawsuit against the Constitution DAO. So I think that's where we'll find some answers in the next year or two. But I think, yeah, I mean, listen, the more lack of clarity on regulation, the more U.S. companies are going to go overseas.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And then on top of it, what I also kind of hear in what you're saying as well is just using general common judgment, right, and common sense of what seems reasonable and doesn't seem reasonable, right? Does this seem reasonable? That like the APY example that you gave, which I think is very fair framework that definitely makes sense. Let's shift gears a little bit. You definitely have a big fan base in here, as you know, on Goblintown. I want to hear a little bit more backstory on it in terms of what it was like when you created it. What were your expectations when you released it? Because like you said, this was in a bear as well, right? Like, what were you guys thinking at that point? Were you like, we're going to release this thing, it's going to defy all odds, and it's going to become the ultra meme, and we're on our way? Like, how did that all come about? And what were you thinking at the time?
Yeah. So we were building out the 187 and this universe, right? And we had a bunch of characters already ready to like, get ready to go. And I think it was, 2 or 3 weeks before like Luna, Terra, like, Celsius, they all like sort of collapse, right? In the beginning of May. And ETH went from like 3,500 to like 3,500 to then like, 2,000 and 1,000, and it was just like literally, the market was going to Goblintown, and like, I'm myself and the rest of the team, we're all like, fans of everything from the MCU to Star Wars to Potterverse to Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones and things like that. So the concept of like down to Goblintown from The Hobbit is like not lost on us, and obviously the space took down to Goblintown is like, hey, I lost all my money and like, etc. Like, but all the memes were happening of like, everyone has to go get a job at McDonald's, and then the Luna tattoo photo came out from Novogratz and all that stuff. And it was just like and people were just down, right? They were just bummed out. It happened really fast, and it was rough. Yeah. And so one day I hit Gray and Caesar, and I was just like, be really fun if people could change their PFPs to a goblin during the down market. And I could sort of see a sea of goblins in a Twitter space. I think that would be like a really funny sight. And Gray actually didn't know what I was talking about when I said like down to Gobletown. And then so I went a little bit back and forth with him, and then Caesar came on a little bit later. He's like, this is like really great. Anyway, so we're like, okay, maybe we make Goblin a character in the 187, and we release this, very low effort collection of like, sort of like ugly, like Rick and Morty, Ren and Stimpy style, like ugly. Like Gray's an amazing artist. Like he can draw really nice. He can make it cute. He can make it ugly. He can do whatever you want. But so this was very like it was like purposefully well drawn ugly, and we started to like put together the collection, and right away it was just really fun and funny. Like you could just like you see like the characters were just like funny. You could see they had like a lot of personality. They looked like really distinct because like there was a right eye, there was a left eye, there was smiling, they were frowning. And Anyway, so he started to draw it, and then from idea to launch was about, and we're fast when we want to do something, we're pretty fast. It was about I want to say like 8 to 10 days.
Wow.
From like ideation to we went live, and we timed it. Go live with Econ. We knew that was coming up. We thought, hey, it would be cool if we launch it and then everyone could talk about it. Yeah, it was just it was sort of like, out of a movie. It was just insane, instantly insane. We were very deliberate. We wanted to go anonymous because we wanted the collection to speak for itself. And we wanted people just to focus on that and not focus on who we are, which obviously we couldn't have predicted that everyone would obsess over that. We thought people would just have fun with the thing. And then we wanted we actually were like, we actually said the words like crypto like cryptodes vibes, like just vibes, like just have fun and just like make it fun and make it funny. And not take it too seriously and make fun of ourselves and just have fun. And so the only concern we had was like, how do we get the collection out there without people thinking that it's going to be like a wallet drainer, right? You know what I mean? Like, how do we we can't just post it, right? Like, no one's going to see it. So Mike Dudas is an old friend. He was in the startup. When I was at Dwala, he was at Venmo, and we were just old friends. And I gave him a ring, and I sort of felt like Mike was the right guy. He's like in the like quadrants of like, he's got a nice amount of followers, but he's like in that perfect like on the on the 4 quadrants. He's got like startup VC people, he's got DeFi people, he's got like NFT people, and then he's got like the shit posters, right? And he like sort of hits all 4 quadrants from his like different time at like, the block and Paxos and etc. So I was like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're putting out, we think it's funny, we think it has legs, but we need someone to we need to launder someone's good name to basically like put it out there and like say, hey, like the contract's clean, it's good, like I know the people. And then I also know Judas pretty well, so I was like, he's not gonna tell people because he's gonna love that he's the only one who knows. And I've said this to his face a million times. It's like he's got a big enough ego that like the fact that he knows and nobody else knows is such a cool thing that he wouldn't want anyone else to know. So he'd keep it to himself. So anyway, that was how it sort of got out, and then obviously there was other fun stuff like the Twitter Spaces and the voices and the language and everyone thinking the Beeple stuff and the Bored Ape guys and it just it was a lot of fun. And like yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
No, and then like so we built this like the way we look at it is like we're not going and building like a metaverse. We're not going in and building like some like there's a lot of metaverse out there. Like I'm hoping Other Side is the winner. I happen to have minted Chaos Land, so I'm hoping Other Side is the winner. Just like by chance, there's only 111 of them in all of the collection. But we look at ourselves as like the Kardashians or The Rock, right? Like we're not Twitter, we're not Facebook, we're not TikTok, we're not Snapchat. Like we want to be like a really just popular brand on these places, right? Like every metaverse needs a goblin, right? So it's just like that's how we'd rather be like the Kardashians do pretty well, right? So like and they look like goblins a little bit, so it's like perfect. So we're but yeah, we want to be the Kardashians of Web3. At least the goblins in the collection specifically. That we just want them to be everywhere. We want them to be on all the platforms. We want to partner with them. We want to get it's like and it's CC0, so like people can grab it and use it for all their promotional stuff. A lot of that stuff happens just organically.
I think a lot of what you're saying comes a little bit full circle here too, right? Where you started in the beginning saying a community for everything basically that exists, right? There's never been one thing that somebody's put out there that only one person gravitated towards. And like, this is a pretty good example of that too, right? How many people latched onto this and thought it was humorous and everything. And what's standing out for me too is, part of the North Star, it sounds like that you take is kind of this like vantage point of levity, right? Like you have a good sense of humor, you're focused on creating delight for people. You've kind of, that's come up several times in what you're saying, even on the DAO side of things and otherwise. That seems to be like your focus. If it's going to be delightful and fun and funny and people can rally around it, it seems like you're into it, and then it's just a question of how to some extent. I think I've taken that away as a pretty good thought and takeaway from this conversation. Maybe just one or two more questions before we wrap, but
Yeah, sure.
we're at this current state right now, right? Where, not just with Goblintown, but many projects, we've talked in recent episodes about royalties and the state of royalties currently and where that's at, right? It's not limited to there, though. We've got that challenge. We've got other challenges that exist. Where do you think this is going? Like, where do you think royalties are going? And where do you think that's going to land? Where do you think kind of on-ramping and that pathway is going to land? Like, how do you see this kind of panning out?
Yeah.
In the near and midterm?
No, that's a great question. I mean, we took a pretty hard stance on this stuff pretty recently, so I could speak a lot to it. And we've had a ton of other collections reach out to us and ask us our experience and what worked and what went on. I think there's going to be a lot of people who sort of follow suit. But the way we sort of look at, like Blurred, basically, it's so funny how we're all getting into shitcoins because basically Blurred turned NFTs into shitcoins to some degree. So it's sort of like it's poetic, maybe. But it's like the natural evolution. But that being said, there's this amazing model of like royalties for art, right? That like we just, like code is law, and like just because technically you can avoid it, like I think what's going to happen is people are going to, whether they're going to force a migration or they're going to offer a migration, to enforce it. It's just like, I don't know. It to me all this stuff has been like, we had this amazing model, right? And people got, like flippers and traders got greedy, and like, how do I convince an amazing artist friend to come to Web3 when they're like, hey, listen, you're gonna sell this thing, right, for $100, and then everyone who buys one is going to make you their delivery slave for the rest of your life. Like, that's not an attractive way to get someone into this space, right?
Yeah.
And then if the price goes down, like, they're going to harass you for months on end until you either block them or leave Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just not like a super attractive thing. And it's just like the whole royalty aspect is like, hey, listen, if people are buying your stuff, then you're getting rewarded. Now, I think there's also other issues with royalties and payments. Like, for a lot of NFT projects, you're selling out, right? And then within the first 48 hours, you're probably getting 90% of the money you're ever going to get. Mm-hmm. So it's like very easy to be like, okay. And then people are going to start complaining. So it's like, because there's no community where people don't complain, it doesn't exist. And so you're like, you've made 90% of the money you're ever going to make, and people are complaining that you're not doing enough fast enough, etc. So, like, it's just like it also doesn't work. It's not aligned. The incentives are not aligned with the community and the creators. So, anyway, to make a long story short, my thoughts on this stuff is, there's two ways to go about it. You can, if you decide you want to migrate your contract, right? And also, even before I actually say that, there's some contracts that shouldn't be migrated. Historically significant contracts that the provenance of when it was or how it was or all that stuff, that if that matters and actually matters, not just like it matters because it's, it's blockchain, but like CryptoPunks should never migrate their contract, right? The way we saw it is like, there was no historical significance to our contract. There was no reason why, like most people wouldn't even know. Mm-hmm. And like, meaning they wouldn't notice if it's the same underlying stuff, right? Linking to an old contract in the new contract versus the old contract within and of itself. So the long and the short is like, okay, you could take the stance of like other side, which is like, okay, we have 100,000 of these things, so it's like, that's an expensive airdrop, right? So like, burn it and then get the same one back, plus you get a vessel, right? Or you take the stance that we did, which is like, hey, we're going to, like, basically nuke the metadata for the old contract. We're going to airdrop you the exact same one on a new contract. We're going to pay the gas, like we paid like, $50K to airdrop across Illuminati, 187 Goblins and Grumples, we basically paid about $50K. And you're going to like I think there's a lot of theater, like choice theater, which is like, hey, you can either like other sides, like, and I own a bunch of other side, and I like other side, but like you can either burn your thing and get the new thing, or you cannot participate in other side. It's like, all right, sure, I can keep the same one, but like I'm not getting any better. Like there's very few NFTs that like, even if the team stops working, right, there's still value in it, right? CryptoPunks is one of them, right? The team never needs to do another thing and it stays the same value. But if Bored Ape stopped working tomorrow, the value would go down for your Bored Ape.
Yeah, totally.
Right? So it's like, so if you're saying like all the value is going into the next thing, right? And so that to me is like a choice theater. That's like, we might as well cover the cost for our people. And the last thing I'll say about royalties, we're basically done with the migration, hopefully officially today. And we have a nice little, very much in Goblintown fashion, we have a nice little like horse head for Blur coming.
Amazing. So it sounds like I think we're heading back to royalties is what I'm taking away, forced or otherwise.
Well, here's the problem. So all the collections that are now made now, they're going to follow whatever the rules are for OpenSea and Blur to enforce royalties. There's a path to take, but it's not enforced by the contract. It's enforced by the exchanges. And I think we're going to be talking about this again when someone else comes along and violates all that and says 0% whatever. Like it's inevitable. So until royalties are forced by on chain, which is by the way possible. We actually built we called it ERC 721R, and it basically enforces royalty, but still allows you to send it to like transfer your NFT, but you cannot basically exchanges if they do it for you. It's like enforced from the contract level. There's no adoption for it because we didn't release it, but it's it will I assume eventually the contract will be enforced by on chain, and that's how it's going to end up being. So we're going to play this game for a while, I think.
Super interesting. Well, it was a phenomenally good episode of in conversation of everything you talked through right now. I feel like I certainly do, and I'm sure others have lots of thoughts coming out of this. So definitely no shortage of thoughts, and much appreciated you just talking openly about everything.
Yeah, of course.
Before we hop, one small question from the crowd, or a specific question, which is regarding Vitalik's fund. I think you mentioned it at the top of the hour. What is the name of that fund, real fast? I just want to make sure that gets answered.
Wait, which one?
Vitalik's fund that you were referring to.
Oh, it's called Fenbushi. Fenbushi, is that right?
There you go.
Fenbushi. Yeah, Fenbushi. Fenbushi Capital. .vc.
Amazing.
Well, he was the founding. I'll say he was one of the founding people for the fund.
Amazing. Well, AJT, really appreciate the conversation today and you speaking so openly about everything. I mean, lots to unpack there. Maybe we'll have to have a follow up at some point in the near future, maybe on the next 420, and that'll become traditional but really appreciate you coming on and talking through. Everyone, of course, in the live crowd and as well as the recorded crowd, really appreciate all your thoughts always and questions and feedback. So much appreciated again, and we will see everyone a similar time next week. We'll see how today's episode pans out over the next week. Again, last week it was shitcoins. This week it's this. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe DAOs start popping off in the next week. We'll see. But thanks so much again.
No, thanks for having me. Always happy to come by. I've been a holder since day 0, day 1. Maybe like day 2.
Amazing. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks again. We'll see everybody down in VC1. Thanks all.